Anti-D Law welcomes you to the 7-day course for the LSAT-India. In this course, you will receive 7 lessons each for logical reasoning, analytical reasoning, and reading comprehension. So let's begin with today's lecture. Today's session is LR5, the 5th lesson on logical reasoning. We'll begin with our first question for today. Alright, so pause the video and try solving it by yourself first, and then we'll have a look at the solution together. So we'll have a look at this part of the question first and then have a look at the options later on. What you can see here is that you're given a situation and then an analysis. And what you're required to do is to see as to which of the 4 options most appropriately reflects this relationship between the situation and analysis. So we first have to understand this relationship and then see as to which of the options shows this relationship. So let's try to understand the relationship here. Okay. So the situation given is that some people in cold places buy coats. But these coats, although it is cold, are stylish but not warm. Alright, so it is stylish but not warm. And so this is the situation, right? And the analysis is that some people are willing to sacrifice sensual comfort, right, for the sake of appearance, which means that they will go for appearance instead of sensual comfort. Sensual comfort or pleasure means the pleasure relating to the senses. So to feel warm, it's a sense of touch, right? So as you can see, style basically is the appearance and the feeling of being warm is the sensual comfort. So this is the analysis. Now let's have a look at the options. So our conclusion from the situation and the analysis was that some people would, for the sake of appearance, sacrifice their comfort and their preference and their pleasure, right? So let's first start with looking at the worst and the most wrong options. It's a good idea to always start by eliminating the bad options first, because then you're more sure of your answer, right? So one of the worst options here is the option D. Have a look at it. It talks about a person sets the thermostat at low temperature during winter because of environmental damage and fossil fuels. So as you can see, this talks of several extraneous things. It is unconnected and irrelevant, and therefore I will eliminate this option. Alright, let's look at another not so right option. Let's look at option B. Okay, so let me just clarify that D is not the answer. Let's look at option B. It says that a parent buys a car seat for a young child because it is more colorful and more comfortable. So as you can see, colorful is the appearance, but it also says that it is more comfortable, right? Which means that when he is buying a seat, it is both colorful and comfortable, which means they are not choosing between appearance and comfort, right? So again, I will get rid of this because we are talking about a case where a person sacrifices comfort for appearance, right? Had this been a case of somebody going for a colorful one instead of a comfortable one, then perhaps this could have been the answer. Okay, now let's look at option A. It says that a person buys an automobile to commute even though public transportation is quick and reliable. You see, public transport may be quick and reliable. So what he's choosing here is that he's choosing his own car over, let's say, a bus. And it says that the public transportation is quick and reliable. But it's important for you to know that perhaps, and this is what you should remember, that perhaps the car is quicker and perhaps it is more reliable, right? Nothing has been said about the car, which means that perhaps the car could be quicker, it could be more reliable. Therefore, you cannot say that a person has chosen a car only for appearance. Maybe there was more comfort, maybe there was more reliability, and therefore I can eliminate option A as well. Option A is close. It's important for you to learn that. This leaves us with the option C, which is the answer, and let us see if this works out, if this fits into the formula that we've just put up for ourselves. So as you can see, it says that a couple buys a particular wine, although their favorite wine is less expensive and better tasting, which means in terms of sensual pleasure, the tongue taste is a sensual pleasure. So here, this is tastier. It is more comfortable on the pocket also because it is cheap, right? So people are willing to sacrifice this taste because they think it will be more impressive, and impressive is on the appearance, and therefore option C is the right answer. Okay, let's go to our next question. We now proceed to our second question, which is also from the LSAT India official prep test. Alright, so take a moment, try to solve this question by yourself before you listen to my explanation. It's a very beautiful question. So as you can see, there is something said by Amar, something said by Madhuri, and now we have to see as to on what point they disagree. This is very important to remember before even you go and read this here. You are here to look for the point of disagreement. You are not here to look for the point of agreement, right? So now you have your objective, that you're looking for the place where Amar is saying this and Madhuri is saying this. You're looking for the point where they disagree. Now that we've understood this, let's go back and have a look at what both of them are saying. So as you can see, the topic of their discussion is about the life of moderation, right? So about this, what Amar says is, Amar says that a life of moderation can be achieved by never deviating from the middle course. He says you never deviate from the middle course. He says, of course, but when you never deviate, then what happens is that you lose some joy of being in the extremes, right? So as you know that when you talk of something being moderate, what that means is that it's not extreme, it is more temperate, it is more centered, right? So he says that you lead a life of moderation by never deviating from the path of moderation. So he says you never deviate from here. That is what is a life of moderation. This is what Amar has to say. Now let's have a close look at what Madhuri says. What Madhuri says is that if in the interests of moderation one never risks going too far, that also is not a life of moderation. She said one must be moderate in moderation. So what she's basically saying is that, let us say if this is the path of moderation, these are the extremes, okay? So she says if you very rigidly just stay on this path and you never go here and there, it means you're being extreme in following the path of moderation, which means you're not moderate. Which means that according to her, a path of moderation requires that you may have to sometimes deviate, right? So as you can see, this is the point where they disagree. As far as this is concerned, that one loses the joy of spontaneity, misses the opportunities and all of this, there is no disagreement here because she has not spoken about it, right? This is something only Amar has spoken about. She has only spoken about what a life of moderation is like, what it takes to lead a life of moderation. So on this point, both Amar and Madhuri have spoken, and therefore you can find a disagreement here. Now let's have a look at the options. Now, we'd just seen that the very clear answer to this was exactly what we arrived at, which is the option B. Now let's have a look at the other options to see why they are not right. Let us take, for example, option D. It says, how often a person ought to deviate from the middle course in life. You see, they are not talking about what a person ought to do. This looks like a very correct answer, but it is talking about what one ought to do. And this is not something that is being discussed here. They are talking about what a life of moderation is. Alright, so although it looks like a right answer, this has a normative ought angle to it, and therefore it is not strictly confined to what is given in their dialogue. So I will eliminate option D. Let's look at option C. It says whether it is possible for a person to embrace other virtues along with moderation. You see, this has not been spoken of. You are not required. So basically what you're seeing here is the disagreement, which means the disagreement has to be within what they have spoken. They have not spoken of other virtues and all of these, so I will eliminate this because this has extraneous data. Let's look at option A. Whether it is desirable for people to occasionally take great chances in life. Well, as I said, Madhuri has not spoken about whether it is desirable or not. Also, Amar has only said that there are two sides to it. So he says that if you are moderate, then you might miss out on some joy. That's what he says. That you could lose some joy. But he has not spoken of what is desirable. This is again something that has not been spoken of, and therefore it's not a point of disagreement. And therefore quite clearly the answer to this is the option B, that they basically disagree on what a life of moderation requires of a person. So according to Amar, what is required is that one can live a life of moderation by never deviating. But what Madhuri says is that one must be moderate even in one's moderation, which means they can sometimes deviate. We now proceed to our final question for today's session on logical reasoning. Alright, so take a moment to solve this question by yourself and then we'll solve it together. Alright, so this is a question in which you have to logically complete the argument. Alright, now when you're saying that you have to logically complete something, what that means is that this argument is of course incomplete, but it has certain direction. So it has a certain step, then another step, and then you take a third step, and then you have to complete it, which is not given to you. What that means is that by having understood the direction of what has happened before, you complete it by taking the next step in the same direction, right? So what you should ensure is that you understand the direction in which the argument is going. Because if you have not understood that direction, then when you go ahead to complete it, perhaps you might go astray, you might take this or you might take this. So the entire exercise when we see this is that we try to see as to what the direction in which the argument initially is, so that you can complete it in the same direction. Now let's have a look at the argument. So the argument that you see here is that he says that advertisers have learned that people are more easily encouraged to develop positive attitudes about things towards which they have even neutral or even negative attitudes if those things are linked with pictorial rather than prose related cues. What that means is, let us say if there is something for which they have either no attitude or even a negative attitude initially, what the advertiser says is that if these things are linked with something which is positive, and this positive thing is not prose, which means it is not text, but it is a picture. Okay, so obviously what the advertisers want to do is that suppose they're selling this product, they want to link it with something for which you have a positive feeling, and then of course that would make you buy that product. So that's what one can infer, because that's what an advertiser wants to do. So basically what you're getting here is that you would want to link your product with a picture that brings positive feelings, right? So it says therefore advertisers are likely to, well, that's what it means. So advertisers are likely to link with a picture that evokes positive feelings. Now that we've understood this, let's have a look at the options. So essentially what advertisers would do is that if there's a certain product for which a person may have no feeling or even a negative feeling, they link it to something that he has a positive feeling, and that thing is generally a picture, because pictures work better, and then they're able to sell their product. So once you see this, you can see that option C is a very obvious right answer, because it says you create advertisements containing pictures of things people like. So you make an advertisement containing a picture of things people find positive or they like. But now let's look at why the other options are not right. Okay, let me first take option A. Option A looks like a good choice, but it is not the main point, and it is not the it's not the step that they're going to take. Of course, between pros and pictures, we know that pictures were better, which means that they will use less pros if they should. But that is not the step that they're going to take. The main step that they're likely to do is to use a picture which has positive things. So this one is correct, but it is too narrow, right? So you should remember that something which is too narrow, too extreme, too vague is generally not the answer. And therefore, although option A is not bad, it is not the most logical conclusion to this, not the most logical completion. Let's look at option B. Try to encourage people to develop positive attitudes. That's not the point. You are not trying to make people develop positive attitudes. You are giving them something for which they already have a positive attitude. So I can eliminate option B as well. Look at option D. It says highlight the desirable features by contrasting them pictorially with undesirable features of a competing product. Now, the undesirable features of a competing product are not positive things for the person who is the audience. So therefore, this is again extraneous, and therefore I can eliminate option D as well, leaving quite clearly the answer as option C. Create advertisements that contain pictures of the target or that the target audience likes. So I hope this session made sense to you. Thank you so much.